another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, just visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. Now, welcome to you, our Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We now present a reading of articles and features from the USA Today for Tuesday, April the 7th of 2026. And your readers today are Jody
and Ellen Blackburn.
And I'm going to start you out on our front page with my article, Ceasefire Proposal is Rejected by Iran. Trump continues his threat to bomb those energy sites. Iran, on April 6, rejected the latest ceasefire proposal to end the war, the country's state-run media has reported, as mediators scrambled to reach an agreement ahead of President Donald Trump's deadline to strike Iran's power plants if the Strait of Hormuz remains closed. Now, the 45-day ceasefire framework was organized and delivered by Pakistan overnight, Reuters and the Associated Press has reported, citing Israeli and Mideast officials. Now, it would involve an initial ceasefire during which talks would be held for a more lasting agreement. Iran's response consists of 10 clauses, including an end to conflict in the region, a protocol for safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz, the lifting of sanctions and reconstruction, the IRNA news agency had reported. Trump said Iran's proposal was significant but not good enough, as he vowed to bomb the country's energy sites on April 7th if the Islamic Republic refuses to make a deal. The Iran official says the region could go dark. An advisor to Iran's supreme leader said in his statement that the region could go dark if Trump strikes Iran's power infrastructure. The rulers of #Arab countries should, in order to prevent the region from going dark, make Trump understand that the #Persian Gulf is not a place for gambling, they said. Israel says Iran Guard leaders have been killed. A barrage of airstrikes hit Iran on April 6th as the U.S. and Israel stepped up their attacks on the country. Israel said it killed 2 high-ranking members of Israel's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard. The Israeli military also said it struck the largest petrochemical complex in Iran, delivering a major financial blow to the Islamic Republic. The strike on the Asuleya facility, it knocked out about half of Iran's petrochemical production. Now, that's according to Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz. Then later in the day, Iranian state media said U.S.-Israeli forces attacked another petrochemical complex in Mardasht, but there was no major damage at that one. Now, Pope Leo urges peace. In his Easter message on April the 5th, Pope Leo urged world leaders to end these conflicts and turn to peace. On this day of celebration, let us abandon every desire for conflict, domination, and power, and implore the Lord to grant us his peace to a world that's ravaged by the wars. Leo told this to the thousands of people who were gathered in St. Peter's Square. Now, Trump says Iran got lucky. Trump, in an interview with Axios on April 5th, said the Iranian forces, they got lucky when they shot down the F-15E Strike Eagle, and that officials initially had feared that a radio message from a now recovered crew member was a trap. He told the outlet that the U.S. had beeping information on the airmen recovered on April the 4th. Trump added that a message sent after the airmen ejected, which he described as something a Muslim would say, caused officials to suspect that it was a potential trap. An unidentified defense official told Axios that the radio message from the weapons officer was, "God is good." Now, Trump said that those who knew the officer explained that he was religious and that it would make sense for him to say that phrase.
Mom told fatigue is normal while mold poisoned her. In 2018, pregnant with her 3rd child, Kate Ames was exhausted. Already the mom of a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, her friends and family told her the fatigue was normal. You're a mom, and of course you're going to feel like crap and be tired all the time. Ames, who lives in Arizona, remembers thinking, I didn't know motherhood was going to feel like this. Depression grew alongside her tiredness, so when she went to her OB-GYN, they too told her it was normal and suggested therapy. I kind of got passed around to different doctors for different reasons, said Ames, who's 35. She held a growing suspicion that something was wrong. Different things would keep popping up. Years later, when doctors and air quality experts found her symptoms were caused by undiscovered mold in her home, her relief turned to anger. Why hadn't they listened to her in the first place? Ames is one of thousands of women who have felt ignored by medical professionals. There's a long history of women's pain being dismissed by doctors, incorrectly categorized as period pain, or rooted in psychological distress. Some women have died because of these oversights. The 2024 Women's Health Survey found 1 in 5 women said a health provider ignored a direct request they made or a question they asked in the past 2 years, and nearly 1 in 5 women said a provider didn't believe they were telling the truth. Women are often victims of medical gaslighting. The virtual care program for women with autoimmune disease said, and Rudolph got sick in her mid-20s and said the mold was one of the triggers that led to her autoimmune illness. She was referred to a psychiatrist for some of her symptoms. She said the runaround she got from doctors made her question whether the symptoms she was experiencing, fatigue, digestive issues, and brain fog, to name a few, were real. And what is mold illness and how common is it? After she had the baby, Ames said her symptoms continued to expand and worsen. She developed skin rashes and digestive issues and pain in her legs and joints. Persistent ear pain made it feel like someone was going around digging in there with an ice pick. Eventually, an eye infection took her to a doctor who diagnosed us with autoimmune disease. While the medication for the autoimmune disease helped a little, Ames continued to feel sick. It was kind of miserable, she'd call it. She'd heard about mold poison, but didn't consider that could be the cause of her discomfort. And then they did some testing. Results showed high levels of mold toxins in her system. Ames had her home tested after that. After those results confirmed the house had mold with high enough levels in the air alone that experts told the Ames family to leave their home immediately. Ames was shocked. How could it be mold when she was the only one in her family who seemingly had symptoms? It's actually very common for people in the same home to have varying degrees of reaction to mold exposure. People have different natural detox abilities based on the toxins already in their systems and genetic factors. We deserve better. Ames said her family left the home right after the test and lived with an extended family for about 2 months while the house was remediated. The main source of the mold in their home was hidden below their second bathroom and into their crawl space. 100% not visible water damage to us. It cost just under $13,000 to fix, and their insurance covered some of it, and the average cost of mold is about $2,300. It took about 3 months of living in a mold-free environment for her symptoms to start to die down. She's no longer in pain, and said her brain fog and rashes are gone. Her ears are still sensitive, but overall, she said her lingering symptoms are minor.
Experts see big hurdles for a mail-in ballot order. President Donald Trump's new executive order seeking to create a federal list of U.S. citizens eligible to vote in each state and instructing the U.S. Postal Service to move towards sending mail ballots only to these verified voters is already meeting significant legal challenges. But even if it prevails in the courts, Trump's latest effort to take federal control of the U.S. elections before the November midterms would be logistically impossible to actually implement, the elections experts say. In signing this March 31st executive order, Trump has directed his administration to compile lists of who is eligible to vote in states and for the federal government to figure out a way to mail ballots only to those who meet the criteria. Now, it also specifies that the Department of Homeland Security should coordinate with Social Security Administration to create lists of voting age U.S. citizens who are residents of each state and then transmit them to state voting officials who already maintain their own voter rolls at least 60 days before an election. In an Oval Office event announcing the order, Trump offered few details except to say that this came up with some great legal minds helped to devise the new system. Now, the move escalates Trump's bid to place new restrictions on voting ahead of midterm elections that will determine which party controls both houses of Congress for the last 2 years of his second term. But the experts said the Trump administration appears to have done little in terms of workshopping how to actually implement this presidential order. The era of trust but don't verify, it's over, True the Vote says. The conservative elections group True the Vote was one of many Trump supporters that cheered his EO, saying it's needed to restore trust in this mail-in voting. Credit where it's due. This administration had the temerity to act on an issue Americans overwhelmingly support, it said on its post. States that don't comply could face federal funding consequences, True the Vote said in another ex-post. The era of trust but don't verify is over, but some other conservatives, they were less enthusiastic. What does Trump's executive order on mail-in ballots actually do? Trump has suggested for months that federal government could and should nationalize the voting process to crack down on fraud and prevent what he says is cheating by Democrats to win the elections. There's virtually no evidence to support such claims of widespread voter fraud, and Democrats and voting rights experts say the extremely rare instances where it does occur are the results of mistakes, not intentional efforts to sway an election. Trump's latest move to take control of the elections from states was swiftly condemned by the Democrats and voting rights groups, who said it amounts to an unconstitutional effort to interfere with state election administration and make it harder for potentially millions of people to go vote. The new order was devised by some great legal minds. Trump has focused on voting legislation in the run-up to the November midterm elections, urging Congress to pass the Save America Act, which would require proof of U.S. citizenship to register to vote and a photo ID to cast their ballot. Now, the legislation has stalled amid strong pushback from opponents. At the executive order's announcement, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said the proposed new system for mail-in voting involves using a unique barcode from the U.S. Postal Service on special envelopes to ensure each vote is trackable and secure. What the president is doing today is he's going to make sure that the mail-in ballots are safe and secure and accurate, and they will have a clear distinction, separating them from the regular mail, he said. Impractical, unneeded, reckless, and expensive. In an email to USA Today, a spokesperson for the National Association of the State Election Directors said it's too early to tell how Trump's order would even be implemented, much less whether it would be feasible in time for the midterms. The order asks the U.S. Postal Service to issue a notice of proposed rulemaking, which is a formal document published in the Federal Register to announce and explain a new proposed regulation and to initiate public comment period, allowing citizens and organizations to submit feedback. Now, in Oregon, the first state in the nation to vote exclusively by mail, Secretary of State Tobias Reed said he and his counterparts have been given no information about how this new system would work. It's just another example of how unserious this whole thing is, he said. It is not only impractical, it's unneeded, it's reckless, it's expensive, and fundamentally, it's a giant overreach by a president who I think is desperately worried about his unpopularity and the fact that he has to face the accountability in an election. Now, the proposal is not only too politicized, but it also seeks to reinvent a system that states already do very well, Reed has said. So why would Trump's order be so hard to implement? Stewart from MIT's Election Data and Science Lab, he ticked off for us a long list of ways which it would be nearly impossible to establish such a system on the fly, including creating a national list of citizens 18 and older living in each state. He said there are already a ton of problems related to the quality of this data, the integration of various systems and databases, how to deal with the exceptions and the mistakes, big variations in state laws, how to maintain a national live list of approved voters, how to devise a national envelope and tracking system, how to establish privacy controls, and how to design and debug this whole system. Now, Rosenwig, who now runs Red Branch Consulting, said just one of the lists in questions, the Systematic Alien Verification for Entitlements database, it has a 20% error rate in verifying its citizenships. Matthew Tregasser, a spokesman for U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, said that since April of 25, USCIS has identified more than 21,000 cases of potential non-U.S. citizens who were on the voter rolls, and those cases have been referred to DHS's Homeland Security Investigation agents for further investigation. Now, DHS did not respond to USA Today questions about the errors in SAVE SAVE or whether the agency would be able to comply with this Trump's executive order. But Tregasser said in his statement, USCIS has overhauled the SAVE program, making it fully operational, and it's committed to helping eliminate voter fraud and restore trust in America's elections by ensuring that only U.S. citizens can vote. The U.S. Postal Service's problems, they are also legion, Rosenwig said, especially when it comes to overcoming organizational dysfunction and implementing targeted mail pullouts for specific individuals. The Postal Service is a huge bureaucracy, he said. You can't implement anything in under 6 months. I'm not saying that in a bad way, he said. I'm just saying that, in a way, That's what's realistic.
Well, you're listening to Reading of Today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:15. 2 elections this week, with one having an impact on the U.S. House. Whoever wins gets the job. That's what's at stake in the elections in Georgia and Wisconsin on April 7th. That's today. Voters in Georgia's 14th Congressional District will cast ballots in a runoff for Marjorie Taylor Greene's replacement in the U.S. House of Representatives. And Wisconsin voters will choose a new judge for the state Supreme Court, among other local positions. Those races are part of a unique roster of 2026 elections. Across the country, there aren't primaries, but offer opportunities for Republicans and Democrats to either maintain or gain power. And the stakes are high, even in the case of state and local level positions, as the success of President Donald Trump's second-term agenda hangs in the political balance. An open U.S. House seat in Georgia. Today marks a runoff in Georgia between 2 candidates, Democratic Sean Harris and Trump-backed Republican Clay Fuller. The March 10th primary headed to a runoff after no candidate earned over 50% of the vote. Harris finished with 37% of the vote in the primary, according to the CNN and APP, the most of any Democrat by a wide margin. Trump-backed Fuller finished with 35% of the vote, beating out Republicans Colton Moore, Brian Stover, and Tom Gray. Harris has led Fuller in campaign fundraising. As of April 2nd, Fuller showed $1.2 million, while Harris topped $6.4 million, according to the Federal Elections Commission. Harris has drawn support from Democratic heavyweights at rallies in Rome, Georgia, including former Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg and U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock. But Fuller's victory over GOP peers last month may signal that Trump's endorsement still weighs heavy on the minds of voters in the highly Republican district. Both candidates have hit the ground running since the primary to make their case to the voters. Last week, both Harris and Fuller attended a town hall meeting about forever chemicals exposure in local industries. Whoever wins the race will head to Congress right away. A Harris win and a flip of the district to blue could be a hit to the House's narrow GOP majority, while a Fuller victory could be a boost of support to the GOP's plans. Wisconsin's Supreme Court will hold its liberal grip. Wisconsin's Supreme Court is made up of 7 judges, currently 6 women and 1 man, who each serve 10-year terms. Their justices are elected in what is known as the spring election, which falls on April 7th this year. The Supreme Court is the only statewide contest on the April 7th ballot. 2 candidates are running for judge, both of whom serve on the State Court of Appeals. Conservative appeals Judge Maria Lazar, a former assistant attorney general during former Scott Walker's administration, faces off against appeals court judge Chris Taylor, former Democratic state lawmaker, who previously worked as a policy director for Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin. The 2026 Supreme Court race may not have the national reach the 2025 contest did, when Liberal Susan Crawford won a race that broke records for the country's most expensive court race. Whoever wins this year's race won't change the current court's liberal majority. It could be worthwhile to pay attention to these state races for a few reasons. First, the races aren't primaries, meaning winners don't head to another election in November, and whoever is successful in Georgia's runoff will head to Washington to start the job. And the winner of Wisconsin's race will be sworn onto the bench to serve a 10-year term. In Wisconsin, even if the winner doesn't cost the liberal majority, the court will likely take up topics with national implications, like recent challenges over the state's congressional maps. And ruling that only the state Supreme Court has the authority to overturn under the current parameters of the case. Another lawsuit against the map is set for 2027. This comes amid a wider push among states to redress congressional maps ahead of the 2026 midterms. The Georgia election's direct impact comes in the U.S. House, where Speaker Mike Johnson could either gain a friend or a foe. The successor to Green could fall in line with the House's slim GOP majority, or prove to be a fresh Democratic detractor in the lower chamber, further testing the success of Trump's second-term agenda in Washington.
Infection in kids is deemed frightening. Doctors, they're alarmed by the new cases of a deadly disease. A handful of children have been hospitalized for potentially deadly bacterial infection, alarming some doctors about the possible return of a once feared contagious disease that vaccines have now tamed. Serious cases of Haemophilus influenza type B, or HIB, as they refer to it, once impacted 20,000 children in the U.S. every year. The disease spreads through the coughing and sneezing with respiratory droplets that contain the bacteria. Invasive infection included infants and toddlers developing pneumonia, meningitis, septic arthritis, blood infection, and swelling in the throat, causing permanent disabilities and death in about 5% of the cases. Older doctors, they have haunting memories of severe illnesses they have seen, of brain swelling and of children suffocating. The HIB vaccine, introduced more than 3 decades ago now, is recommended for all children younger than 5, and it drastically cut cases, preventing nearly all vaccinated children from developing the disease. Infants receive 3 or 4 vaccine doses beginning at 2 months old. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention today reports fewer than 50 cases for a year. That's a reduction of more than 99%. But as more parents skip routine vaccinations of their children, doctors are worried that HIB cases will return in force. 2 severe cases in Florida's Beachtown Hospital in 2025 and another 2 cases that were presented at a Tennessee research institution, they are sparking concern. What's really going on? Asked Dr. Paul Offit, a director at the Children's Hospital in Philadelphia, who wrote a blog post that was called "The Return of HIB" in March. This is not a disease that you want to come back, he says. The CDC is not seeing an increase in preventable invasive HIB infections among children, according to an email from Andrew Nixon, who's a spokesperson for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Dozens of states have expansive vaccine exemptions for religious and personal belief. Now, Florida is looking to end school entry vaccinations, including for HIB. Drops in vaccinations have already contributed to the rapid resurgence of measles outbreaks across our country. If we choose not to vaccinate, there are a number of serious diseases that children can acquire, says Dr. Catherine Edwards, a vaccine safety expert at Vanderbilt University Medical Center in Tennessee, where doctors have recently seen 2 cases of this HIB. Parents need to know that, and doctors, they need to remember. Since the HIB vaccine nearly eliminated the disease, physicians today, they might not look for signs of the infection in a child. It's just crazy that we're going backwards on these vaccine-preventable diseases, said Dr. Philip Huang, director of Dallas County Health and Human Services. Huang, who saw cases in medical school just before vaccines became available, said his country has continued to see significant declines of HIB immunization. A past chair of the Big Cities Health Coalition, Huang said federal monitoring has lagged in reporting and lab support to monitor HIB, making it harder to detect cases until it's too late. In Florida, Kenway, a doctor for 27 years, has never seen the bacterial infection, but now he has to consider that a fever, which is common, of course, among children, that might be a symptom of something much worse. I now have to think of these differentials, he said.
Supreme Court clears the way for the Department of Justice to wipe Bannon's conviction. The Supreme Court on April 6 paved the way for the Trump administration to wipe out the longtime Trump ally Steve Bannon's contempt of Congress conviction. At the request of the Department of Justice, the court effectively erased lower court rulings upholding the conviction and sent the case back to the district court, where the department has asked for the case to be dismissed. Bannon, who's now a host of a popular MAGA podcast, was convicted in 2022 for defying a subpoena from the House Committee that investigated the Capitol attack on January 6th of 2021. Bannon has already served his 4-month prison term after the Supreme Court in 2024 rejected his bid to remain free while he appealed. But Bannon continued to dispute the conviction, and after Donald Trump became president, the Department of Justice stopped defending it. It's not uncommon for the Supreme Court to drop a case when that happens. The Trump administration told the Supreme Court that the dismissal of this criminal case is in the interests of justice. Trump has criticized the prosecution of Bannon and other allies as politically motivated. He has pardoned approximately 1,600 people for charges related to the attack. Bannon pardoned before. At the end of his first term as president, Trump pardoned Bannon as he was awaiting trial in New York for a different case, fraud charges tied to a border wall fundraising effort. Bannon was one of 4 people accused in 2020 of defrauding hundreds of thousands of donors in the We Build the Wall GoFundMe crowdfunding campaign to finance one of Trump's signature goals. In 2022, a jury found Bannon guilty of contempt of Congress because he refused to comply with a congressional subpoena. Bannon said he was relying on his lawyer's advice not to respond to the subpoena from the Congressional Committee investigating the January 6th attack until another issue was resolved. Bannon believed Trump could protect him from testifying by invoking executive privilege, which allows presidents to keep some executive branch discussions confidential. Because he was acting on good faith, Bannon argued, he did not cross the criminal line of willfully failing to respond. Bannon also questioned the validity of the subpoena. House lawyers argued that Bannon had thumbed his nose at the committee and ignored the subpoenas. Lawmakers had sought to question Bannon, a political strategist for Trump, who pushed him to aggressively embrace populism during the 2016 campaign because he told associates from China on October 31st of 2020 that Trump would falsely declare victory even if he lost the election and said it would be a firestorm. In his podcast, Bannon said former Vice President Mike Pence spit the bit, which meant he no longer supported Trump's effort to overturn the 2020 election. The committee described the comment as amplifying the pressure on Pence.
Eagle parents Jackie and Shadow's second chick. It was born on Easter. Famous Eagle parents Jackie and Shadow's second egg. It officially hatched on Easter Sunday, giving fans and its parents a second ball of fluff to watch and love. Now this chick, which is being referred to as Chick 2 until it's officially named, it was hatched on April the 5th at 8:30 a.m. local time in Jackie and Shadow's nest, according to the Friends of the Big Bear Valley and Big Bear Eagle Nest Cam at Big Bear Valley Facebook. The nest is located at Big Bear Valley. That's a 15-mile valley in the San Bernardino National Forest in Southern Cal. The chick's hatching was caught on camera the morning after its older sibling, which was Chick 1, hatched on April the 4th at 9:33 p.m. Chick 1 was receiving its first feeding when Chick 2 fully hatched from its egg. The chicks are considered fully hatched when it's completely free of its eggshell. Both hatchlings were caught on camera via the Big Bear Eagle Nest Cam, and the clips were then later posted to the Livestream's Facebook account. Congratulations on your 2 beautiful fluff balls, Jackie and Shadow. Bobbleheads and daddy duty. Jackie was successfully feeding Chick 1 for the first time when Chick 2 hatched, while Shadow was away from the nest. Initial feedings are often challenging as the chicks do not have much muscle strength in their necks, the group said. So at this stage, they're often called the bobbleheads. Now, soon after Chick 2 hatched, Shadow came back to the nest. He seemed quite proud and didn't waste any time snuggling in for daddy duty, they said. Jackie laid the eggs more than a month ago. Jackie and Shadow have been guarding the eggs since Jackie laid those on February 24th and 27th, according to reporting. The eggs came after tragedy struck during the 25-26 breeding season. The couple then lost their first clutch of eggs, which had been laid in January after ravens breached their nest. How to watch the Big Bear Bald Eagle live streams. The live streams can be watched on Friends of Big Bear Valley's website at friendsofbigbearvalley.org/livestream. Viewers can watch the couple care for the chicks from multiple angles via the 2 different live streams on that site. Now, when did Big Bear Valley Nest Cam begin? The preservation group set up a webcam in the Big Bear Lake Forest back in 2016, located 100 miles northeast of LA. Now, over the years, Jackie and Shadow have grown in an internet flock, and there's been plenty of drama, including Shadow chasing off another big male in 2018. The couple has welcomed chicks in 2019 and 22, but then it lost eggs in 23 and 24. Then in 25, 2 eaglets did survive out of the 3 eggs that were laid. And they have a little most excellent picture. You can see the giant nest. It's huge. You can see the little chicklings with their head up. They're the size of like little tiny yellow fluffy chickens. And the screenshot, it says a screenshot from the Friends of Big Bear Valley Eagle Cam. It shows Jackie and Shadow's 2 newborn eaglets.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:29, and it's on to the money section. Retiring comfortably just got harder. The magic number now climbs to more than $1.4 million. Americans now need $1.46 million to retire comfortably, according to the 2026 edition of a well-known financial planning survey from Northwestern Mutual. The retirement magic number estimates how much money American adults think they'll need to retire in comfort. It is intended as a guidepost for retirement planning and not as a specific savings goal, said John Roberts, Executive Vice President and Chief Field Officer at Northwestern Mutual. It's also a goal few Americans have reached. Nearly half of non-retirees surveyed said they do not think they'll be financially prepared for retirement when the time comes, according to the 2026 Planning and Progress study. And roughly half of all Americans surveyed said it's likely they could outlive their savings. Running out of money in retirement is a perennial fear among older Americans. There seems to be a widening gap between what we all expect are going to need and what we actually have. In 4 previous years, the retirement magic number has ranged as low as $1.25 million in 2022 and has not ranged higher than $1.46 million. The survey comes at a moment when Americans are coping with years of cumulative inflation. A retiree in 2026 can expect to pay more than ever, for example, for long-term care expenses such as assisted living and skilled nursing. Not many Americans retire with $1.46 million in savings. Typical household in the 65 to 74 age range has about $200,000 in retirement accounts, according to the 2022 Federal Survey of Consumer Finances. And few, if any, retirement planners would suggest that every retiree needs $1.46 million to make ends meet. Most Americans retire with nothing close to $1 million in savings, and many retire comfortably on Social Security income alone. A more attainable retirement planning goal suggests that you aim to save 10 times your annual income by age 67. For the typical American household, that would work out to a little over $800,000 in savings, based on a median household income of $83,000 in 2024. According to the Northwestern Mutual survey, few of us have met that goal. Within Generation X, the cohort of nearing retirement, only about 13% of survey respondents said they had saved 10 times their income or more. And a majority of Generation Xers that said they have saved 4 times their income or less toward retirement. Not surprisingly, only 49% of Generation Xers said they would think they'll be financially prepared for retirement. Half of Generation Xers plan to continue working in retirement. If any group of Americans is on track for retirement, it might be Generation Z, the cohort whose oldest members are nearing 30. According to the Northwestern Mutual survey, nearly 3/4 of Generation Z have already saved more than 1 year of income for retirement. And the average Generation Z person started saving for retirement at age 22. The typical Generation Xer, by contrast, started saving at age 32. The good news is Generation Z is putting away money earlier.
And Trump's drug tariffs could be the latest hit to consumers. Watchdogs worry that the plan could lighten the pocketbooks. Drug pricing watchdogs worry President Donald Trump's plan to assess 100% tariffs on some imported brand name drugs could lighten patients' pocketbooks. But that fate is far from certain, given the caveats the Trump administration announced as part of the sweeping April 2nd order on tariffs for imported brand name pharmaceuticals. The tariffs assessed to larger drug companies, they will take effect July 31st unless companies commit to price concessions and bolstering domestic manufacturing. Smaller drug manufacturers, they will have until September 29th to comply. Americans are already struggling with the price of everyday goods, and when it comes to life-saving or essential medicines, any small increase on the cost of the drug you have to pay for monthly, that can have a significant impact. So how does the Trump administration tackle drug affordability? Trump has made most favored nation deals on a centerpiece of his administration's effort to lower drug prices for consumers. The administration had announced deals with 16 of the 17 major drug manufacturers that it sent letters to in 2025 seeking price concessions on those brand name drugs. Now, while touting these deals as a boon for consumers during Oval Office announcements, the Trump administration has not publicly released terms of these voluntary agreements. tariffs. Drug affordability, it remains a top concern. Most people with health insurance will likely use their plan's drug benefits to fill their scripts, but still, affordability is a concern for most Americans. About 6 in 10 Americans said they are worried about being able to afford their prescription drug costs. So, what's excluded from this brand name drug tariffs? Now, while Trump's order broadly applies to brand name drugs and drug ingredients, it excludes generic drugs that represent about 9 in 10 prescriptions that are filled by Americans. Generic drugs, they have lower profit margins, and they often include ingredients that are made overseas where the manufacturing costs are typically less expensive. The generics and biosimilars industry applaud the administration for recognizing the unique aspects of our industry's supply chain and exempting generic and biosimilar medicines from the tariffs, they said. Murphy did add that the Trump administration understands the savings and access provided to American patients, as well as the potential harms and unintended consequences associated with further burdening the economics of our industry in the U.S. The European Union, Japan, South Korea, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom, they are exempt from the tariff due to existing trade deals with the U.S. Now, a senior White House official said the tariff will help ensure the U.S. is not beholden to other countries for our life-saving drugs. The U.S. is heavily reliant on imports, threatening to limit U.S. access to life-saving medications in the event of a global supply chain disruption due to geopolitical or economic disruption. The order Trump signed on April 2nd, the states, adding that about 53% of our patented drugs distributed in the U.S., they are manufactured outside of the country.
Opportunity gap. The job report shows U.S. added roles in March. And can the 2026 grads get hired? Last year, new college graduates wanted remote, high-paying jobs that aligned with their values. This year, they just want a job. With 89% worrying AI could replace entry-level roles, up from 64% last year. 67% of graduates would now accept a lower-paying position if it offered more job security. Monster's 2026 State of Report graduate report found they do not want to be the last one in and the first one out on their new job. Career expert Vicky Salami said, adding, young people are noticing waves of corporate layoffs. They really want to feel like they're going to be in a job for long term. Then the Gray and Christmas report may have confirmed some of their fears. If it found U.S. employers announced 60,000 layoffs in March, up 25% from February, and AI adoption was the primary reason behind a quarter of the cuts. Overall, the U.S. economy added 178,000 jobs in March, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics estimated April 3rd, which is a figure well above forecasters' expectations. And that's up from the now downwardly revised 133,000 lost in February. The return to work in March of about 31,000 striking Kaiser Permanente healthcare workers accounts for some of the rebound. The unemployment rate ticked down to 4.3% in March from 4.4% in February. Andrew Stetner, a senior director of economic security at National Employment Labor Law Project, said the report is a positive bounce back from February, but that it doesn't change the labor market's overall nature. He said, we have found this job creation in the economy, and that's been particularly hard for people that have lost their jobs. The kind of layoffs we saw last year are young people coming out of high school and college. Even with this gain, we're just averaging about 68,000 jobs per month this year, and that's not enough to make up for the ground that we really lost last year. How is the job market for new college graduates? The unemployment rate for recent college graduates aged 22 to 27 stood at 5.7% in the fourth quarter, up from 5.3% in the prior quarter. The age group's underemployment rate, which tracks the number of graduates working at jobs that usually don't require a college degree, rose to 42% in the fourth quarter, its highest level since 2020. Speaking to a class of Harvard University students on March 30th, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell said that he's well aware of the low hire environment young people are facing amid low job creation and the rise of AI adoption, but he's optimistic about the labor market in the long run. The unemployment rate is really low, but that doesn't help you if you're coming into that kind of a market. Powell said, advising students to invest the time to really master the use of these new technologies. And that should stand you in good stead, but there's no denying it's a challenging time to enter the labor market. Most 2026 graduates are still optimistic they'll land a job. 79% say they think it will happen within 3 months. That's down from 83% of 2025 grads who thought they would find an opportunity shortly after graduation. And how is the job market overall? After a year when the Bureau of Labor Statistics estimates U.S. employers added only 181,000 jobs throughout all of 2025, Powell said changes in immigration policy have brought down both demand for and supply of workers. Uncertainty surrounding AI adoption and recession fears could be leading some companies to pump the brakes on hiring, but there are still some with bright spots. ADP's April 1st National Employment Report found private sector employment rose by 62,000 jobs in March, and pay was up 4.5% year over year. Unemployment insurance claims stood at 200,000 in the week ending March 28th, a decrease of 9,000 the previous week. Hiring plans rose 157% in March to 32,000, up from 12,000 in February, according to a Challenger report. About 21% of those planned hires are for seasonal summer jobs. The report also found that private employers have announced plans to hire 6% fewer workers in the first few months of 2026 than they did during the same period of 2025. Employers are not pulling back in a meaningful way. They're moving more cautiously, said Christine Belmont, the Plans Group of President of Technology Staffing. Hiring cycles are slightly longer. The expectations are higher, and there's a clear focus on bringing in talent that can deliver an immediate value. The emphasis has shifted from volume to quality. Is the Iran war affecting the job market? Oil price surges resulting from the Iran war have pushed up gas prices at the pump and inflation expectations. The conflict has made the U.S. labor market more vulnerable, but any impact will take some time to materialize, said Oxford lead economist Nancy Van Houten. James McCann, a senior James Well, agreed. Higher energy prices and uncertainty over Iran conflict could push firms to pull back on hiring and maybe even drive layoffs in the most affected sectors, McCann said, adding it's probably way too early to see effects of the March data. We would need to see a larger and more prolonged energy price spike to drive a meaningful labor market deterioration. Which industries are hiring? According to the Challenger report, the automotive industry leads all others in hiring plans so far in 2026, with intentions to hire 12,258 workers. The entertainment and leisure sector followed closely behind with plans to hire 8,261. In March, healthcare returned to its role as a reliable engine of job growth after the end of the Kaiser Permanente strike. It added 76,000 jobs last month, the Labor Statistics Bureau estimates. Construction added 26,000, transportation and warehousing added 21,000, and the social assistance sector added 14,000 in March. The federal government shed another 18,000 jobs, and employment in the financial activity sector dropped 15,000 in March. Employment in other industries, including manufacturing, professional and business services, and leisure and hospitality, changed a little last month, the Labor Statistics Bureau said.
And you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on our Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our time is 12:43, and we're still in our money section. Now, I have Canada sharply cut its U.S. liquor imports. The move came after Trump's tariffs, the report says. U.S. liquor exports fell more than $90 million last year, which a trade group has blamed on trade friction with Canada and Europe after President Donald Trump imposed emergency tariffs that the Supreme Court, though, has since overturned. Exports to Canada dropped sharply after provincial stores removed American spirits from their shelves in March of 25, according to a report. And European Union imports of American whiskeys, that declined after producers sent extra shipments in late 24 because of the threat of retaliatory tariffs. Now, Council CEO Chris Swanger said the 3.8% decline in exports underscored the industry's vulnerability to uncertain trade policy and reinforced the importance of having no tariffs on spirits. The decline came after exports had grown fivefold in the past 25 years, from 478 million in the year 2020 to 2.37 billion last year. Trump imposed emergency tariffs worldwide on April 2nd of 25 to pressure other countries to reach new trade deals, to reduce trade deficits with other countries, and to raise money for the federal treasury. But the Supreme Court ruled in February that he didn't have the authority to single-handedly impose tariffs under the 77 International Emergency Economic Powers Act. So Trump imposed 10% temporary tariffs under a different statute after that court's decision. His administration is pursuing longer-standing duties through investigations for national security and trade deficits. Now, President Donald Trump skillfully used tariffs to sign over 20 trade deals that have created unprecedented market access for American food, beverage, and industrial exports to economics worth trillions with nearly 2 billion people. White House spokesperson Kush Desai told USA Today. Now, as these trade deals and the administration's pro-growth policies of deregulation and working-class tax cuts take effect, it's going to be bottoms up for American distillers, brewers, and winemakers. Canada's imports fell more than 70% as provinces removed American brands from their shelves from March through December. Alberta and Saskatchewan, they are only two provinces who have since lifted their bans, though. Without the Canadian decline, exports of U.S. spirits would have increased 2.5% last year, the council had said. The decline in American whiskey exports was driven by a sharp reduction in the exports to the European Union, which were down 35% last year. Some producers accelerated exports in 24 as the union threatened a 30% retaliatory tariffs on American spirits, which have been suspended, though, through August. Now, in contrast to the decline in sales to Canada and Europe, exports grew to Brazil, the United Kingdom, and Australia, they said. Stable, tariff-free trade and expanding market access abroad are essential to ensuring continued growth for the U.S. spirits sector, Swanger has said.
And here's the Ask Johnny column by Johnny C. Taylor. Johnny C. Taylor Jr. tackles your workplace questions each week for USA Today. And he's the president and CEO of SHRM, the world's largest trade association of human resources professionals, and author of Reset, A Leader's Guide to Work in the Age of Upheaval. So his column's about human relations. Negative feedback in the right way can be used to advance your career. Question: I've received 2 rounds of negative feedback from my manager regarding my performance in the last year. I put a lot of energy into my work and take pride in it. How do you separate negative performance reviews from your personal self-worth and professional pride? This is a question by Sophia. Answer: Johnny says, let me start with a hard truth. Ego doesn't belong in a performance review. Effort matters. Caring matters. But performance feedback isn't about how hard you try or how much you value your work. It's about results, expectations, and impact. That distinction is essential. A performance review is not a character reassessment. It's not a referendum on your worth. It's data. And like all data, it's only useful if you're willing to look at it honestly. 2 rounds of negative feedback in a year is a signal, not a sentence. The mistake many professionals make is treating feedback emotionally instead of analytically. And when that happens, pride gets in the way of progress. Growth requires humility, not defensiveness. Your first job is to evaluate the quality of the feedback itself. Strong feedback is specific, behavior-based, and tied to outcomes. It answers questions like, what isn't working? Where am I falling short? And what does good actually look like? Vague statements or general dissatisfaction aren't helpful. And if that's what you're getting, you're right to push for clarity. Ask for specifics. Examples. Clear expectations. If your manager can't articulate what needs to change, that's a management problem. But if they can, and you've heard the same themes more than once, it's time to take the feedback seriously. Next, take an honest look at fit. Are you struggling with execution, or are you struggling because the role requires strengths you don't naturally bring? That's not failure, it's information. Not every capable, motivated person is suited for every high job. High effort in the wrong role still leads to disappointing results. This is also where professional pride needs recalibration. Pride should come from your willingness to improve, not from resisting uncomfortable truths. The strongest professionals I know don't confuse confidence with inflexibility. They adjust, they learn, they close gaps. Work with your manager on a concrete plan. Identify what needs to improve, how it will be measured, and by when. It might include upskilling, process changes, or resetting priorities. It's also smart to seek perspective outside the formal review process. A mentor or trusted colleague can help you pressure test and what you're hearing and identify your blind spots you may not see on your own. One final point, repeated negative feedback should prompt reflection, not self-doubt. If you made genuine efforts to improve and nothing changes, if the expectations keep shifting or success remains undefined, that may say as much about the environment as it does about you. Remember, your self-worth shouldn't rise and fall with performance of you. Treat feedback as information, not identity. Drop your ego, keep the accountability, and focus on improvement. And that's how careers are built and sustained.
Senators ripped putting Trump's signature on U.S. money amid our economic woes. 2 senators want to know how a decision to place President Donald Trump's name on U.S. currency was made and what the move does to address Americans' economic worries. Now, in a letter sent April 2nd to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, Senators Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts and top Democrat on the Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs, and then also Jeff Merkley from Oregon, say they want to better understand how, if at all, the decision to put President Donald Trump's signature on paper money will in any way benefit the American public as our nation confronts an affordability crisis of President Trump's own making. Now, on March the 26th, the Treasury Department announced Trump's name would appear on all future U.S. paper currency, the first time such a gesture has been made for a sitting president. In a statement accompanying the announcement, Bessent said Trump's leadership has put the nation on a path toward unprecedented economic growth and fiscal strength and stability, and suggested that there was no more powerful way to recognize the president's achievements than the U.S. dollar bills that will be bearing his name. Now, in reality, Warren and Merkley said in their April the 2nd letter, Americans are facing an affordability crisis, and America's economy is on shaky ground. Warren has requested that Bessent reveal the logistics and the cost to taxpayers of adding Trump's signature to our nation's paper currency, and explain how the move will lower the cost of housing, energy, or groceries in a slow inflation. The senators suggested the move might be a ploy intended to distract the public from the tangible, undeniable economic crises they face on a daily basis. Mortgage rates have risen to their highest level since September, and inflation is projected to top 4% by 2026. They said the trends that claimed are driven by President Trump's reckless military actions in our Middle East. Now, meanwhile, oil prices are rising, they said, as the cost of everyday essentials are. In other words, life is becoming less, not more affordable for Americans, the senators wrote in their letter. It is deeply unclear how, if at all, the administration believes that emblazoning U.S. currency with President Donald Trump's signature will address any of the serious problems that are facing our American public. The Treasury Department, it did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Anything else, Alan?
Yeah, we have a little extra time for our break, so here we'll get back to the first section. A woman advocates for attractive Democrats. The goal is to try to make it sexy to be a Democrat again. John F. Kennedy's grandson, Jack Schlossberg, fired off a flirty fundraising text on Valentine's Day about someone suggesting he'd be a good partner in an effort to move potential donors to his New York City congressional campaign. Valentine's Day feels like the right time to bring this up. The message read with a graphic attached from an obscure social media account. The colorful graphic was made by Boyfriends We Deserve, the pet project of little-known Democratic strategist Monica Lewinsky, that boasts a dedicated following in Washington as she advocates for attractive political candidates. The Schlossberg team told supporters over a text message that a good boyfriend is someone who listens, same with a good rep. Vensky, who's 28, wants her party to embrace the deep bench of male political hopefuls who can properly bench press and objectively beautiful women as they seek to win back broader support in November. Vensky told USA Today she feels she has a unique opportunity to try to make it sexy to be a Democrat again, demonstrating that people can be hyper-masculine and also think that people deserve health care. Trying to get attention to people who deserve it. Raised in the D.C. area during the Obama years, Vensky had a front row seat to history. After graduating from Miami University in Ohio, she found her own seat at the table in politics. She took a traditional route, working first on Kamala Harris's 2020 presidential bid, and then Joe Biden's winning campaign in the same year. Vensky's career in political communications brought her to the New Hampshire Democratic Party before she joined opposition research group American Bridge 21st Century as press secretary, later rising to become their House Communications Director. But in September, she jokingly launched Boyfriends We Deserve on social media to prop up political candidates with manicured hair and biographies. Her endorsees included Scranton, Pennsylvania Mayor Paige Cognetti, the union-leading smoke jumper Sam Fornstag in Montana, and Tejano singer turned congressional candidate Bobby Pulido. Boyfriends We Deserve borrows its name from David Hogg's controversial fundraising arm of similar name. Leaders We Deserve, that frustrated party insiders in 2025 after the gun control activists sought to unseat Democratic incumbents. I would love for it to become a thing one day, Vensky said of her future ambitions. But for now, I just think for the 2026 cycle at least, just try to get attention to people who deserve it. Vensky had seized on a common theme in the wake of the 2024 election that pitted former Harris against now President Donald Trump, what and who is considered normal or cool. The respective campaigns fought to stay cool, with Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Harris's running mate, labeling Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance weird as the Harris campaign courted A-list celebrities. Trump did the same, appearing on popular podcasts hosted by famous men while seeking to support the young male voters. In Washington, what is cool to Vensky means hot, and she has added more names of candidates that make a D.C. strategist swoon. In Washington, what is cool to Vensky, in other Vensky selections include musically TikTok famous paramedic Bernard Taylor running in a competitive Florida congressional race, and in Michigan, a reloaded U.S. Senate contender Mallory McMorrow, and bearded U.S. House aspirant Cal Blomquist, Iowa gubernatorial candidate Rob Sand, and bow-hunting, gas station pizza-eating state auditor and Wisconsin Supreme Court hopeful Chris Taylor also grace her list of hotties.
And you've been listening to a reading of articles from our USA Today for Tuesday, April the 7th of 2026 on our Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return to you for more readings just after this short break now. And your readers again today are Jody
and Ellen Blackburn.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of USA Today. Your readers are
Jody
and Alan Blackburn, and it's on to the sports section. And we start off with an article about the UCLA coach of the women's basketball team. UCLA coach Corey Close walked into the Bruins postgame presser drenched, wearing ski goggles and a hat on her head with a basketball net still around her neck. After 15 years, Close was a champion. As Lauren Betts, Kiki Rice, and Gabriela Jaquez sat next to Close, answering questions about how UCLA defeated South Carolina, she looked on with pride. Still, there were moments she looked down at the table reading the stats and shaking her head in amazement. The 51 points the Gamecocks scored were the seventh fewest in a championship game. South Carolina's 29% shooting percentage from the field was the third lowest in a title bout, and the Bruins allowed only 95 points combined in their final two games of the season, the second fewest ever by a national championship team in the Final Four. UCLA is also the first team, men or women's, to hold its opponents to under 30% shooting from the field and less than 15% from the three-point range in a national title game. Still, Close didn't want credit for the coaching masterclass she displayed. It's not about me, it's about watching these incredible young women become dream chasers and watch them grow in ways that we'll remember and will stick with them for the rest of their lives. It's about their work and their habits yielding. And we say this, we want to recruit courageous, gets me choked up. There are a lot of times we wondered if it could be true. I said I wanted to find uncommon, courageous women that were willing to make uncommon choices that may possibly could yield an uncommon result, and today it did. Close's voice trembled as she talked about a dream realized. The Bruins head coach that spent the last year working to get back to the Final Four stage, not just win, walk away with an elusive trophy she'd been actually chasing since she arrived at UCLA in 2011. During the 2024-25 season, UCLA was the number one overall seed. However, the Bruins season ended in heartbreak in the Final Four semifinal game. By halftime, UConn had a 20-point lead and eventually won 85-51. Close told USA Today Sports in February he felt like she had failed as a leader, but that loss changed her leadership style. Close confirmed her evolution as a leader again when she was asked to evaluate herself now that she was a champion. She said she hoped she chose to grow as a leader. She talked about what she and her players had learned over the last year. Being able to turn the pain of regret into the pain of discipline, to then see the chosen pain of discipline pay off is in having championship habits today, that's really rewarding, Close said. I just think that's the best part, right? When you ask Lauren Betts about what she's most proud of, it's about what she was able to overcome. Even for me as a leader, I think I'm most proud of the ways in which I had truth tellers around me that told me the hard things. And hopefully I had a humble heart to go, okay, I received that. And these are the changes I have to be responsible to make. Her players also noted a difference in Close as they marched toward their first title. Over the last few months, the coach started their film sessions with I will declarations. Each player was asked to write 5 to 7 statements each day. The positive affirmations intensified over the last 3 to 4 days of the last week. Players were asked to write things that were going to be important in their preparation for South Carolina. Players all agreed that sacrifice was crucial at this stage in the season.
And now we're still going to talk about UCLA. My article is called Superlative Seniors, and there is a huge color picture. And you can see the team just celebrating. They're in their uniforms. They have their championship caps on their heads, the beautiful trophies right front and center, and there's confetti just flying all over. And the caption reads, "The UCLA Bruins celebrate after defeating South Carolina Gamecocks for the school's first women's NCAA tournament title that was on April the 5th. Lauren Betts led veteran Bruins and last dance with championship. UCLA women's basketball's senior core had one more crack at an elusive NCAA national championship. One last dance, if you will. After the Bruins were knocked out of the 25 Final Four in a blowout fashion, Lauren Betts, Kiki Rice, Gabriela Jaquez, Charlize Legger-Walker, and Angela Dugalic opted to return to UCLA to run it back one final time. UCLA didn't let the moment pass and dismantled South Carolina 79-51 to win the program's first NCAA national championship in Phoenix on April the 5th. Today was just a fantastic display of our resilience, our intensity, that we came out. Just our will to win, said senior guard Rice, who finished with 10 points. We had a feeling this was our time, this was our year. There's just no better way we could hope to end our career. Now, UCLA head coach Corey Close said she had pulled Betts aside ahead of the tip-off to tell her, no matter what happens today, I'll always be more proud of who she's become and who she's impacted more than any net will ever cut down. Although Close said the game's outcome wouldn't define Betts' legacy or UCLA's journey, both Close and Betts knew how the game would end before they even stepped foot on the court. Yesterday, I knew that we were going to win because we were just so focused, Betts said. When you have a certain energy in practice, you wake up the next morning and you're like, we have done everything you can possibly do to be ready for the game. It's just like the confidence that you have. The joy that we have and the love we have for each other, that has really motivated us all this whole season because we just want to be there for each other, Jaquez said. Since the roster was made, we just knew we had the tools. It was just about staying focused and working hard every day to be the best versions of ourselves. We continue to talk about going 1-0, taking it one game at a time and being our best selves. That led us to this very moment. Jaquez and Rice are a rarity in the modern landscape of college basketball, where the name and image and likeness deals and transfer portal has created high turnover year after year. But Jaquez and Rice, they spent the entirety of their 4-year career at UCLA, and they chose to return following last year's Final Four routine. Close has praised her team's loyalty and selflessness for seeing their shared vision through. It's just so rare in life that you start a journey with a group of people and really envision something. It's just great. It's just really with great humility. Man, we are so fortunate to be experiencing that. They earned every bit of it, she says. Betts transferred to UCLA in 23 following one season at Stanford, a move she called the best decision I ever made. Betts said she arrived in LA with zero confidence and her passion for basketball had suffered. But then when I came in my sophomore year, I was completely different than I am today. I showed up and I wasn't sure if I wanted to really play basketball for that much longer. Coach Corey really stayed patient with me. She wanted to see me accomplish everything that I'd ever dreamed of. They just continue to remind me. They want me to see myself the way they all see me. I feel like now at this point I can finally do that. Betts watched last season's Final Four loss at least 10 times, but the amount of time she plans to rewatch this historic victory, well, that will surpass this. Everyone understood the moment, never had to question that we weren't going to go out there and be ready, Betts said. You could tell on everyone's faces how bad we wanted it. When the duty called, everyone answered. So I'm just really proud of this group.
Brandon Holtz is golf's everyman at the Masters. Brandon Holtz is the proverbial Cinderella story out of nowhere at Augusta National Golf Club for this week's Masters tournament. An unranked 39-year-old reinstated amateur and Remax real estate broker from Bloomington, Illinois, Holtz won the U.S. Mid-Amateur in September at Troon Country Club in Arizona to punch his ticket into the field of 91 contestants at the 90th Masters this week. Established in 1981 to provide a true national championship post for post-collegiate amateurs 25 years and older with a handicap of 2.4 or less, the U.S. Mid-Am attracted 5,942 entrants into the field. Holtz won his local qualifier and began the week as one of 264 qualifiers at 69 sites across the country, who first had to endure 36 holes of stroke play on 2 courses, with the low 64 advancing to a single elimination match play bracket. Holtz played well enough to do so, but nearly got bounced in his quarterfinal match. He trailed 3 down with 5 holes to go before he birdied all 5 to force extra holes and birdied the next to win. He proceeded to birdie the first 3 holes of his match in the semis for 9 straight birdies over 2 matches. A lot of guys were out here playing the golf course how it's supposed to be played, and I was just out there trying to make birdies, Holtz said. I'm not a rocket science. But in match play, isn't that what you're supposed to do? In the final, the glass slipper fit. He benefited from good advice from Todd Mitchell, a friend from home who had made the Mid-Am final in 2008, who told him, stay in Arizona. In other words, stay in the present. don't begin thinking about it would be like to play in the Masters. He basically said, don't make the same mistake that I made. He raced to a 5-up lead after 20 holes, but his opponent, Jed Coughlin III, trimmed his deficit down to one down after 28 holes. A birdie at the 34th hole and the Robert T. Jones Memorial Trophy and a gold medal belonged to Holtz, 3 and 2. In addition to the Masters invite, he earned a berth in this year's U.S. Open and the next 2 U.S. amateurs, and is exempt in the next 10 U.S. mid-amateurs. After he won, he received 5,000 texts and emails, hearing from friends he hadn't heard from in years. It took nearly a month to respond to them all. The Cinderella story out of nowhere is 14 years older than any of the other 5 amateurs in the field, and he has improved to 3,263 in the World Amateur Golf Ranking. The next highest ranked amateur in the field, number 112. While Holtz concedes it's surreal to be in the Masters, he's quick to point out that he's no shrinking violet. There's a reason we're here, Holtz said. It's not that we limped into it, although there are probably a lot of people who think that. I wouldn't say that I got lucky. I can play. And if we went out and play, you'd find out. Well, Holtz's story is all the more remarkable considering he played college basketball, not golf at Illinois State. He described his abilities as a 3-point shooting specialist with self-deprecating humor. I couldn't run, I couldn't jump, couldn't really dribble, but I could shoot the hell out of it, he said. He turned pro as a golfer in 2010 and chased many tours in the Carolinas, Florida, Georgia, and Illinois, including the Hooters Tour, the Peach State Tour, and the West Florida Golf Tour. He never won an event, but only missed one cut. The largest check he ever cashed as a pro was for $14,000 for finishing runner-up at the Illinois State Open. In his biggest previous victory, before winning the U.S. Mid-Am, a mini-tour event on the defunct National Pro Tour, and more recently the City Medal Play in Bloomington after regaining his amateur status. He beat around golf's bush leagues for 4 years, but when he got married and had 2 kids, it was time to find more steady work. Holtz previously sold sports equipment, but when COVID hit and youth sports shut down, he lost his job. Holtz is in his 4th year at RE/MAX, and it's a job that allows him the flexibility to make his own schedule and squeeze in golf with friends, who he said are all husbands and fathers like him. He applied to regain his amateur status in 2023, primarily so that he could play with those buddies in local competitions, and was reinstated the following year. Holtz has been to the Masters countless times thanks to his father Jeff, who won lifetime badges in 2004, but they've never seen the Masters quite like this. We were always wondering what's it like inside the ropes, what's in that building, and this year we found out a little bit in practice rounds. But we'll get the entire show this week, said Holtz, who had his dad on the bag when he won the U.S. Mid-Am, and we'll have him reprise that role at the Masters. They spent the maximum 5 days that competitors are allowed to spend at the club ahead of the Masters and played 36 holes a day, as well as bumping around the par 3 course. He intends to enjoy all of the perks of being an amateur in the field, including spending at least one night at the Crow's Nest. Fred Couples, a childhood favorite, and Gary Woodland, who played basketball in college too, are high on his list to join for a practice round. The whole experience is the stuff of which golf dreams are made of. In golf, every man at the Masters is ready to give it his all. I'm a pretty realistic guy. The chance of me going out and winning the whole thing is pretty low percent. But I'm a competitor, he said. I want to make the cut and just want to compete for the low AM score.
And you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on our Niagara Frontier radio reading service. Our time is 1:13, and we're still in sports. Spawn wins the Texas Open, and he eyes Augusta. When J.J. Spawn broke through for his first PGA Tour victory at Valero Texas Open back in 22, the aftermath felt almost surreal. One moment he was soaking in the easygoing rhythms of Central Texas. The next, he was being whisked onto the golf's grandest international stage at Augusta National. It all happened so fast, Spawn admitted a year later when he returned to TPC San Antonio as the defending champ. I felt like I was in a dream. I was signing the registration book at Augusta National and thinking, I can't believe I won my first tour event yesterday, and now I'm here preparing to play the Masters for the first time. Now that victory proved to be more than a fleeting moment. In the seasons that followed, Spahn's career accelerated dramatically. Last year, he finished inside the top 50 in all 4 major championships, etched his name into history by capturing the U.S. Open with one of the most improbable winning putts in recent memory, and he amassed more than $13 million during the 25 season. By year's end, he had climbed to the number 6 in the official world golf ranking. But golf rarely moves in straight lines. The opening months of 26 brought a far different rhythm, as Spahn struggled to regain his footing, missing the cut in 4 of his first 7 starts. And so he arrived back in Central Texas again, searching for the spark and the feeling that first turned a quiet week in San Antonio into a pinch-me moment that changed everything. Spahn did just that, using a gutsy eagle on the risk-reward 17th hole as a catalyst to securing his 3rd PGA Tour victory and putting him back in the proper mindset with the first major of 26, just a few days away. In that California native, he fired a 32 on the back nine and finished the Wet n Wild tournament at 17 under, holding off a charge from 54-hole leader Robert McIntyre to claim his title. Spahn admitted he came back this year with a grand plan that wasn't panning out, and then he recently reverted to simply enjoying each round more. There's just so much that comes with winning big events like this, like a U.S. Open or any major, Spahn said. I put a lot of pressure on myself this year to start the year and a lot of expectations. It's the complete opposite of the mantra I had all last year, really, that really helped me. So I tried to go back to that. Went into the last few weeks, starting at the Players, just trying to be freed up and be less pressure on myself. It's been trying, but sticking to that mantra, that has really helped me. Now, McIntyre, meanwhile, was gunning to be the 3rd straight left-handed player to capture the Valero after Akshay Bhatia in 24 and Brian Harman in 25. Each turned the trick, but the Scottish star, he posted 2 bogeys on the back and looked to have fallen out of contention. He pulled back within a single shot, though, when he too made an eagle at 17, but a wayward second shot on the par 5 18th hole, it proved his ultimate demise. Now, since players needed to finish their 3rd rounds earlier in the day, McIntyre already had a crack at the par 5, which features an elevated green and a creek that runs in front. During his first run-through, McIntyre took his second shot to the left, and the result was a bogey. Needing a birdie to force a playoff, he tried the right side this time and snap-hooked his second shot. Although he got relief and had a chance to get up and down to stay alive, his 3rd shot just snuck on the green, and he missed a 30-foot birdie putt. I don't know if you'd seen any second shot this morning. I tried to hit up the left, McIntyre said. I hit it right off the water. I meant to fade it, but the wind's off the right. It's just not a comfortable shot for me. I normally draw my 3-wood, so I should have just stood up there, but my job was to have a 3rd shot, so just do not hit it in the water. So I just overcompensated. I just pulled it. But that's okay because I've got a shot. Yeah, I could have done with being a bit closer. The Oaks course, it was designed by Greg Norman, who has also built similar closing holes in other locales. McIntyre said he simply wasn't comfortable with that shot. The 18th hole, it just reminds me of the finishing hole at Jumeirah Golf Estates in Dubai. Exact same designer, McIntyre said. Carnage. Yeah, it was a good day in the end, but again, disappointing not to get the win. McIntyre finished in a 3-way tie with Matt Wallace, who used 3 birdies on 15 and 17 to get into the clubhouse as the early leader, and then also Michael Kim, who also used a 32 on the back to finish with a 69. I kind of got a run starting on Friday afternoon, said Kim, who was already in the field for the Masters. I was able to keep it going for spurts when it was going well, and it was going great. Lost my swing for a few holes there in the middle of the round today. I was kind of able to figure some stuff out, though, and I was happy with the way I played.
In baseball news, the top prospects debut has this team surging. The loudest roar of the weekend probably came when Connor Griffin cracked an RBI double in his first Major League at-bat. Yet for the Pittsburgh Pirates, silence has been golden. Arguably the game's most downtrodden franchise in the last 3 decades, the Pirates have roared from the gates in 2026, winning 6 of their first 9 games and soaring 12 spots in the USA Today Sports Major League Baseball power rankings. And in sweeping the Baltimore Orioles in their home opening series, The Pirates got deftly pitched games from Mitch Keller and Braxton Ashcroft, 4.5 scoreless relief innings and a 10-inning walk-off, and a 3-run homer from free agent slugger Ryan O'Hearn, his third of the year. Imagine that. A sweep of a good team and Paul Skeens had nothing to do with it. And here's a look at the updated rankings from USA Today. Number 1, the Los Angeles Dodgers. That's what they were last year. Mookie Betts' oblique strain means lots of runs for Miguel Rojas on his farewell tour. Number 2, the New York Yankees, and they're up 3 places from last year. This guy is trouble. Cam Schlittler hasn't allowed a run in his first 11 2/3 innings. Milwaukee Brewers +7. Third team's the charm. Hal Harrison with 14 punch-outs in his first 2 starts. New York Mets +3. Lindor's not hitting. Soto's ailing. Bichette's adjusting, and they're 6-4. The Philadelphia Phillies -3. As Zach Wheeler builds up in the minor leagues, Taijuan Walker's giving up rockets in games that count. Number 6, Houston Astros +6. A great start, spurred by red-hot Yordan Alvarez, but ace Hunter Brown's shoulder ailment is very concerning. Number 7, the Seattle Mariners. Cal Raleigh is 5 for 38 with a 52.6% strikeout rate. Number 8, Toronto Blue Jays -4. A bummer, Cody Ponce's return from Korea derailed by ACL tear after 7 outs. Number 9, the Chicago Cubs -3. Okay, so maybe Milwaukee will be a problem again. Number 10, the Detroit Tigers -2. Justin Verlander battling a bum hip and the age, which is 43, on his driver's license. Number 11, Cincinnati Reds +5. Chase Burns, 1 earned run in 12 innings pitched. Number 12, the Pittsburgh Pirates +12. Starting rotation is yet to give up a home run. Number 13, the Cleveland Guardians. Sure, Chase DeLauder is nice, but of course the pitching with a 3.48 ERA, 4th in the American League, has been absurd. 14, the Atlanta Braves +7. Drake Baldwin tied for National League lead with 4 home runs. 15, Miami Marlins +7. Get used to these fellows. They won't be going away soon. Number 16, Boston Red Sox. 2-7. And Roman Anthony's defense wedges him in at DH. Not a great start. The San Diego Padres -6. Jackson Merrill looking more like his rookie self. Number 18, Arizona Diamondbacks. Zach Gallen outdueled Tarek Skubal, and that's probably a good sign for the rest of the year. Number 19, the Kansas City Royals. I'm going to set $1 million alarms to make sure I'm up, says rookie Carter Jensen after oversleeping leads to benching. Number 20, the Texas Rangers. Jake Berger hopes to see red leads to better results. Number 21, the Baltimore Orioles. Chris Bassett rocked for 10 earned runs in his first 2 starts. Number 22, Tampa Bay Rays. The trope is open for business again. Number 23, the Los Angeles Angels. They're up 3 spots this week, and 1 for every one of Joe Adel's home run robberies. Number 24, St. Louis Cardinals are down 1. Other than Dustin May's struggles, a fine start so far. Number 25, the San Francisco Giants' first ejection. Tony Vitello got that out of the way. Number 26, the Athletics. Nick Kurtz, 4 for 27, no homers. Not quite picking up where he left off in yellow country. Number 27, the Minnesota Twins. Byron Buxton hits 10 years of Major League service. 28, the Chicago White Sox just swept the Blue Jays. Convincing? Not quite. Colorado Rockies. Mickey Moniak lights up the Phillies for 2 home runs. And number 30, the Washington Nationals. Hard to do. Mark Mikolas gives up Nationals record 11 earned runs in 1 start.
And now we have the NHL Power Rankings. Stretch Run includes coaching changes. The competition to nail down a playoff berth is intense, so much so that 2 NHL teams have fired their coaches right down the stretch. Bruce Cassidy was the first to go with the 3rd-place Vegas Golden Knights, replacing the 23 Stanley Cup winner with John Tortorella on March 29th with 8 games to go. Now that followed a 1-4-2 slide that has since has been turned down around. Then the New York Islanders made their bid for a coaching change bump on April the 5th with 4 games left. Patrick Roy is out and veteran Peter DeBoer is in following a 4-game losing streak. The Islanders were in 3rd place at the time of the announcement, but they dropped below the playoff line on the same day. DeBoer, who took the Dallas Stars to the last 3 Western Conference Finals, makes his Islanders debut now on April the 9th. So here are the latest USA Today NHL Power Rankings that have with the 10 days left in our regular season. Now I'm just going to read you their names and then I will give you their figure of their power ranking change. At number 1, they have Colorado Avalanche. Its change is 0. At number 2 is Tampa Bay Lightning. Their power ranking change is +4. 3 is Carolina Hurricanes, 0. 4 is Dallas Stars. Their power ranking is -2. 5 is the Buffalo Sabres. Their power ranking is -1. 6 is Montreal Canadiens. Their power ranking is +1. 7 is the Minnesota Wild with -2. 8 Pittsburgh Penguins with +1. 9 is the Boston Bruins, -2. 10 is the Ottawa Senators with +5. 11 is Philadelphia Flyers, +5. 12 is Utah Mammoth, +1. 13 is the Edmonton Oilers. They have +6. 14 is the Columbus Blue Jackets. They have -4. 15, Anaheim Ducks. They have -3 in the rankings. 16 is the Vegas Golden Knights, +2. 17, New York Islanders, -6. 18 is the Detroit Red Wings. They are -4. 19 is the Washington Capitals with -2. 20 is the Nashville Predators. They have 0 change. 21 is the New Jersey Devils. They have 0 change. 22 is the LA Kings, 0 change. 23, San Jose Sharks, 0. 24 is the St. Louis Blues. They have +4. 25 is the Winnipeg Jets. They're at +1. 26, Toronto Maple Leafs at +1. 27 is Florida Panthers. They're at -2. 28 is Seattle Kraken, -4. 29 is the New York Rangers, +1. 30 is the Calgary Flames at -1. 31 is the Chicago Blackhawks. They have 0 change. And then last they have the 32 is the Vancouver Canucks, and they also have 0 change.
Masters rookies seek green jacket at the first fitting. Ben Griffin waited a long time to play the Augusta National Golf Club for the first time. It took nearly 8 years since turning professional, including a stint when he quit and became a loan officer for Mortgage Group before his breakthrough season in 2025 when he won 3 times. I told myself I was never going to play it or watch the tournament there until I made the field, he said. I've known members to where I could have if I wanted the last few years, but I've wanted to qualify to do it, and here we are. It's pretty cool. As he preps to make his Masters debut in 2026, Griffin has set an ambitious goal. I want to be a winner in my first appearance. I think that would be cool. That would also put him in an exclusive club. Technically, Horton Smith was the first to win as a first-timer, but that was in 1934. The first year it was one of the Masters. Was technically known as the Augusta National Invitational Tournament, and all the contestants were in their first year playing in the tournament. A year later, Gene Sarazen pulled off the shot heard around the world, holding out for an albatross. It's a 3-shot, it's one shot better than an eagle, at the par 5 15th, and went on to victory. The only other player to win in his maiden appearance was Fuzzy Zoeller in 1979. Ed Steed, who was only slightly better known than Zoeller, appeared to be on his way to his first major title. He built a 5-shot lead heading into the final round, was still in front by with 3 holes remaining, but then he bogeyed them all in his 8-foot par putt at 18 hanging on the lip. Zoeller, who closed in 70, prevailed in the first sudden death playoff in the Masters history over Snead and Tom Watson. Zoeller drilled an approach to 10 feet at the 11th hole, the second extra hole, and rolled in a birdie putt. He flung his putter in the air and jumped for joy with outstretched arms. I'm on cloud 9, and I guess I'll be up there for 3 or 4 weeks, Zoeller said afterward. The fact that nobody has done it since, and when it is nearly 50 years, makes that feat seem even more remarkable. When you think about all the talent that's walked through from that practice range to the first tee, and it hasn't happened, said Zoeller, who died on Thanksgiving Day in 2025. Can I explain why? No. Will it happen again? Somebody will do it. Padraig Harrison, the 3-time major winner, chalks it up to nothing more than circumstances and notes that the sample size of the Masters, this will be the 90th edition, isn't that big yet. It's just run to the mill, Harrington said. It's obviously harder to win there than anywhere else. Well, maybe it's a little harder, but it's just like, why hasn't somebody won the par 3 contest in the regular tournament? Jack Nicklaus, the winner of the Masters record 6 times, provided the perfect smart aleck answer when posed the question why it hasn't had a first-time winner since 1979. Because he hasn't shot the lowest score, said Nicklaus. I think Nicklaus takes a little learning. Gary Player, who won the Masters 3 times and often dueled Nicklaus there, echoed that sentiment. It's a matter of faith and patience and experience, Player said. Augusta reveals itself slowly. You must learn its secrets over time. Zach Johnson, the 2007 champ, argued that because it's the one major venue that's played every year, the more experience a player gets on the grounds, the better chance of mounting a successful run. Craig Stadler, who won in 1982 in his 9th attempt at the Augusta National, said, it's not impossible for a first-time competitor to win there, but turned it improbable because there's so much to learn around the greens where a player can and can't miss. He called it a constant learning process.
And you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on our Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our time is now 1:30, and I'm going to move you over to our lifestyle section. I'm going to talk about streaming. ER reunion has McCormick pulling off brain surgery. West Wing star Mary McCormick has discovered a major benefit to getting older in Hollywood. It's the license to oversee brain surgery on The Pit. McCormick, who's 57, she appeared on ER more than 20 years ago. She now reunites with Noah Wyle to portray Chief of Neurology Dr. Linda Conley in The Pit, episode 13, which is streaming right now. McCormick played physician Debbie back on ER. McCormick first drew notice at the pre-brain surgery age back of 20 when she was 26 with her lead role in Stephen Buckcho's ABC series called Murder One, which was from 95 to 97. It was during that era that the actress first worked with the young Noah Wyle during a memorable New York City roundabout theater reading. So we've known each other for a long time, McCormick says. Mary McCormick gets to oversee brain surgery on The Pit. Dr. Conley, who's competent and confident, does the fast work on The Pit. The senior doctor is also a great teacher, willing to train Dr. Victoria Giovanni during the student doctor's first brain surgery. The Conley character was created by executive producer Dr. Joe Sachs, based on a real-life mentor. The scenes portraying the operation on the ER patient who had fallen on his head, they were challenging. During rehearsals, McCormick welcomed all professional feedback to reach the exacting standards of this realistic medical show, especially when using the instruments like a cranial drill. The tech advisor would go, no, you'd never do it like that, McCormick says, and I'd be like, oh, thank goodness, I didn't want to leave the rehearsal set. McCormick even filmed the brain surgeon's technicians on her iPhone during rehearsals, and she spent days shoving the video into my head with repeated viewing. So how was the Wyle and McCormick reunion? Wyle and McCormick had a brief, satisfying on-set reunion. They caught up on everything from kids to spouses. McCormick is married to director Michael Morris, who's a friend of Wyle's. Of course, they addressed their mutual love of This Is Spinal Tap. Noah is the only person alive that loves Spinal Tap as much as I do. We speak almost entirely in Spinal Tap references, McCormick has said. So, will McCormick return to The Pit? The operation, it seemingly goes perfectly, allowing Conley to walk off with another success. There will be a brief appearance in the April 9th episode, but McCormick's work was pretty much wrapped up after the episode's sensational surgery. She exits an even more rabid fan of The Pit and Wyle, comparing his show leadership to Sheen on West Wing. Noah is obviously getting all the attention he has always deserved, she says, but he is also just the best number one on the call sheet, like Martin Sheen level. There's an expression in television, as number one goes, so goes the show. It's true because they set the tone. Now, the veteran actress is willing to come back for an encore should Conley's particular set of skills be required. I'm all for it, she said. But I'm thrilled to be on The Pit, even for a minute, McCormick says. And then again, I'm hoping for another serious television brain injury.
Bret Michaels goes home to Pittsburgh to perform at the NFL draft. Bret Michaels wants to make one thing clear. Yins have no idea how excited I am about nothing but a good draft. The Poison frontman, invoking the regional dialect of his native Pittsburgh, bursts with adrenaline on a typical day. But that he, along with fellow Pittsburgher Wiz Khalifa, and country star Kane Brown had been tapped to perform during the 2026 NFL draft in his hometown of Pittsburgh, has the gregarious rocker vibrating with glee. "This is my bucket list, my dream come true of rock, jock, family, and friends," he says, calling from the Berg, where he has been already preparing for the April 23rd, 25th event at Chrysler Stadium and Point State Park. "I've been asked over the years to do drafts, but I said I'm waiting." Michaels, who's 63 years old, says, "I knew it was in the cards, and I needed to participate in it and perform when it would be in Pittsburgh." Michaels will take the draft theater stage outside the stadium ahead of rounds 2 and 3 on the draft with a 4-song set of ain't all killer, no filler hits, he says. Khalifa will follow with his quartet of songs, sure to include his breakout hit Black and Yellow, which nods to the colors of all of Pittsburgh's professional sports teams. The pair will then share the stage for a recast of Lynyrd Skynyrd's Sweet Home Alabama, which they dubbed Sweet Home Pennsylvania. "Me and Wiz, we're going to whoop it up together," Michael says of the tune they started working on last year while at a party with Fox Sport reporter Jay Glazer. The performances, including Kane's closing appearances April 25th, will be part of the NFL's coverage on the NFL Network, ABC, ESPN, and ESPN Deportes, and available to stream on NFL Plus. Michaels shares his Pittsburgh food recommendations. Though Michaels grew up in Harrisburg, a couple hours east of Pittsburgh, he was born in the city and spent time in Butler as a youngster. It was a superfecta for sports, Michaels said. "Being in Harrisburg allowed me to go Turnpike west to Pittsburgh, Turnpike east to Philadelphia, then I could take the I-83 to Baltimore and the I-15 to D.C. We used to do them all." He also talked about his early days as a musician, traveling the East Coast corridor to perform. The combinations weren't fancy, but they provided plenty of memories. "We were my dad's Galaxy 500. Almost all of the cylinders worked," Michael said with a chuckle. "But we had the 8-track cassette player and the equalizer and everything, so we were golden." In addition to his performance April 24th, Michael will be on site April 23rd for red carpet chats to join local radio stations for the Rock and the Knock. Pierogi toss. He describes a lot like cornhole, except we have humans lying on the ground instead of a cornhole board. The Pittsburgh specialty tops Michael's foods recommendation list for out-of-towners heading to the draft, as does pizza and a meal at the legendary Primanti Brothers, a sandwich restaurant. Michaels has some thoughts on the Steelers draft. As a lifelong Pittsburgh Steelers fan and a longtime personal friend of former Steelers coach Mike Tomlin, Michaels has hope for the future of his team under the guidance of Mike McCarthy. "I cannot thank Mike Tomlin enough for 23 incredible winning seasons. Wherever the world takes us, we are always family," Michaels says. In respect to McCarthy, he's a Pitt-born guy, a winning coach. "I bet everything I have on him because I have to believe he will lead us to the Super Bowl." Michaels, who is roving the country on his live and amplified tour all year, expected to take the podium to help with announcing a later round draft pick for the Steelers, who start the draft with a number 21 draw.
And now another streaming article. The parents of murdered cyclists have found a silver lining. Around the time of her daughter Mariah's murder in 2022, about 2,000 miles away in Austin, Karen Wilson, who was unaware of the tragedy that was unfolding, she read a poem about hope. The well-known maxim, "While there is life, there is hope." It has a deeper meaning in reverse. "While there is hope, there is life," Wilson tells USA Today, reading from a book, "I will lift up mine eyes," that she keeps by her bed. Hope comes first and life follows. Hope gives power to life. Hope rouses life to continue, to expand, to grow and reach out and go on. Hope sees a light where there isn't any. God clearly was putting that in my heart and preparing me for the next day for what I was going to hear. May now marks 4 years since the accomplished 25-year-old cyclist Anna Mariah Wilson, known simply as Mo, was murdered by Caitlin Armstrong. Armstrong had worried that something simmered between Mariah and her longtime boyfriend Colin Strickland, whom Armstrong had lived with. Mariah and Strickland had a short romance in the fall of 21 when Armstrong and Strickland were on a brief break. Mariah's parents say that when Mariah returned to Austin for a bike race the next spring, She and Strickland were only friends, but a jealous Armstrong shot and killed Mariah on May 11th of 22. Now, the events are chronicled in Netflix's documentary called The Truth and Tragedy of Mariah Wilson that is now streaming. The first thing I did when the officer told me that she had died was I screamed up into the sky to God, and I said, "You are going to do something good with this," Karen says. Filmmakers had approached Wilson and her husband Eric about movie ideas, but nothing felt right until they met with Oscar-winning producer Evan Hayes. Now, the documentary captures Mariah's dedication to racing and the zest for life, as recalled in interviews in her family and friends and a former boyfriend. For years, at the end of every day, she would write out what she wanted to try to accomplish the next day, Eric Wilson says, and the 3 things that she was thankful for. The details of her death were recalled by the members of the law enforcement, too. Hearing the Wilsons talk about their child, it moved the crew from their very first day of filming. Now, the film begins with home movies capturing Mariah's early years. It was as if I'd always known her. It was so familiar, Wilson says in the documentary. And just days after Mariah's birth, which was on May 18th of 96, Wilson was hit with the heartbreaking notion that Mariah would leave her someday. At that time, Wilson envisioned an adult Mariah just simply moving out of the house or getting married. But then after she died, when I thought back to that, because it was so powerful, the emotion, I was sobbing and I was sobbing. It was like I was mourning, she says. The day of Mariah's death, she and Strickland had went swimming and for a bite to eat before he returned to Mariah to her friend's apartment where she was staying at around 8:30 p.m., according to the reports. Armstrong fired the first shots at about 9:15. The Truth and the Tragedy of Mariah Wilson shows how investigators pieced together the case and arrested Armstrong in Costa Rica after a 43-day hunt. She had used her sister Christine Armstrong's passport to leave the U.S. Now, according to NBC News, Christine has not been charged with a crime. Caitlin Armstrong was convicted of first-degree murder, and then she was sentenced to 90 years in prison. Zenovich says she reached out to Armstrong in prison and her sister about the documentary, which premiered at Austin South by Southwest in March, but she didn't hear back from either of them. Strickland agreed to be filmed, Zenovich says, but not be interviewed. But I think how he looks and his demeanor really speaks to what this did to him, she says. Viewers have expressed appreciation to the Wilsons for sharing her life because they felt like they really got to know her, Karen Wilson says. And as a mom, I've come to the conclusion that one of the reasons I'm so happy that this film is made is that she is remembered. People die and they get forgotten, and sometimes you never really talk much about it because it's painful or whatever. But I love talking about her, and it keeps her in our life. Mariah's legacy is also continued through the Mariah Wilson Foundation. Now, that annually hosts an annual Ride for Mo event. Now, this year it will be on May the 9th. The foundation is a good place to put our energy rather than just sitting around moping and being sad, Wilson says. There's definitely those moments, and there will always be those moments, but we've just got to live life. She wants us to live life.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 1:42. Marla Gibbs, who's 94 years old, shares why she keeps acting. At 94, Marla Gibbs still tells it like it is. The actress, comedian, and singer, best known as the wisecracking maid Florence on The Jeffersons, and chatty housewife Mary on 227, is looking back on her life and legacy. In It's Never Too Late, now out, published by Amistad, she recalls a life in which she has found success in Hollywood when she was well into her 30s, spawning a 60-year second act on screen. Joining by her daughter, actress Angela Gibbs, Marla says she decided to finally write her memoir at the urging of Angela, her grandson, and her late accountant Derek Folk. While it was tough reliving the past, especially a turbulent childhood, she has a legacy to reflect on. Gibbs' career has centered on the lives of black families and communities. Her portrayals, reflective of real people who live on in television history for their honesty, wit, and charm. Gibbs says Hemsley improvised this in the Jeffersons line. Her most famous role, Florence, was based on the maid she saw when she was younger. Like her character, they unapologetically ran the show. Every house they were dealing with was their house. They told you what to do, and you did what, or they wouldn't stay. she told USA Today, noting that while the writers kept the witty comebacks flowing, she got a say. If I didn't believe it, I changed it, and they allowed me to get away with that. Gibbs, who played off Sherman Hensley as George and Florence would go tit for tat, she recalls the relationship as being a lot of fun, built on the natural comedic chemistry where both would improvise on the fly. In one episode, she recalls, George was going out the door, and so I handed him a bag of garbage. I said, "Here, empty the garbage." And he changed his line immediately and responded to me. He said, "Okay, hop in." I thought that was very funny. For viewers, Gibbs' portrayal was a second skin. "I'm Florence. I made sure it was me," she says. Gibbs pushed for over-the-top Jackie Harry casting in 227. The multi-hyphenate went on to co-produce, lead, and sing theme song for 227, the 1980s NBC sitcom where Jackie, Harry, and young Regina King came to fame. Set in a predominantly black neighborhood in Washington, D.C., the series was based on the 1978 stage play 227 by Christine Houston, where Gibbs originated the role. The actress praises its relatability, which she insisted on preserving. She fought not to be a single woman or own the building at 227 Lexington Place. The majority of people do not own buildings. They rent. All those people I knew growing up, they rent, she says. That desire extended to the cast, in which she pushed to bring on Harry instead of the network's pick, theater darling Cheryl Lee Ralph, to play Sandra Clark. Gibbs says the network thought Harry's performance was over the top, but I said, whatever. They gave me Jackie, she quips, who would go on to become a breakout star. She was 227. The NAACP Image Award winner went on to book roles on A Different World in Martin, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Dawson's Creek, and ER. She played D.L. Hewley's mother, Hattie May Hewley, on The Hewleys, a role she got after kindly kicking the comedian off a stage for his crass comedy. He had come to my supper club open mic one night, and someone asked him to get up. He got up and started performing, but he was cussing, and I didn't allow it, Gibbs said. I came off the stage and applauded and said, "Wasn't he wonderful?" and took him off the stage. She continues, I told him, "You come back when you have some clean material." Later he told me I couldn't come back because I didn't have no clean material. Gibbs will call her agent from the hospital for roles. Younger audiences may also know Gibbs from guest appearances in The Scandal, American Horror Story, This Is Us, Blackish, The Neighborhood, Young Sheldon, and Mary in Grey's Anatomy. She acted well into her 90s with an appearance on Chicago Med in January and 2 more projects in development. If I knew I was going to get all this love later in life, I would not have worried so much when I was young, she says. As for what has kept her motivated all these years, my agents, she said, to laugh. She'll call them from the hospital, her daughter adds. What do you have for me? Gibbs will request, keeping them busier than clients half her age. Gary Purdy is the one that works very closely with me. He said, I better get busy. I said, yeah. For Gibbs, living through many lives keeps coming back for more. People see me as the same, but I see me as a different people. It's different people having different experiences, she says. I don't think you ever want that to end.
And now I'm going to take you back to our front section for my next article, Border Backlash on the Rio Grande. Can the Big Bend stop the wall? Texans of all stripes are united, and signs are it might work. For Denise Carrera, it's the dark, starry nights. For Mike Davison, it's his 49 years paddling the Rio Grande. For Bill Ivey, it's the ghost town business he built with his father and his son. In a state with historic rebellious streak and a likely coalition of Texans of diverse backgrounds in opposing politics are uniting to fight President Donald Trump's plan to spend billions on a border wall here in the state's rugged Big Bend region. River outfitters are bombarding the state's Republican congressional delegation and Republican Governor Greg Abbott with anti-wall postcards. A local photographer started a petition that has garnered more more than 106,000 signatures. Thousands showed up to protest at the Texas Capitol on April the 4th, and hundreds more rallied in Big Bend National Park. There are signs now at great odds that their efforts, they might be working. The Department of Homeland Security has updated its online smart wall map to replace plans for a physical barrier in the region's national and state parks with deterrent technology. Local officials, including the governor, say they've been privately assured a wall won't go up in the parks. Texas and the Big Bend say a border wall in the region threatens their land, their lives, and their livelihoods. They don't want faraway government bureaucrats making decisions without their input. Any physical barrier, it could jeopardize the landscape that draws more than 500,000 visitors here annually, and it drives our local economy. It doesn't take much to kill a community, and a wall coming through the Big Bend country, it's going to wipe out our economy here, says Ivy. I think somebody drew a line on a map in Washington, and they've never even been here, Ivy says. All you have to do is come here and just look at it. The wonders of the Rio Grande. Across the Big Bend region in late March, the bilingual slogans "No Wall" and "No Al Muro" were plastered everywhere, stamped on truckers' hats and signs and stickers and beer cozies. In the 2015 campaign, Trump made a promise to fence off the roughly 2,000-mile U.S.-Mexico border with a big, beautiful wall. His first administration, it built 282 miles of physical barriers, but only 87 miles were new fencing, according to an analysis. Now, Biden halted that border wall construction. Then Trump restarted it. In the One Big Beautiful Bill Act signed into law by Trump last summer, Congress gave the Department of Homeland Security $46.5 billion to supercharge the border wall and its construction. Rugged, isolated areas like Big Bend, they're great opportunities, though, to deploy technology to aid in securing the border, Mihalis has said in an email, adding that U.S. Border Patrol Chief Mike Banks assured the governor there will not be a physical barrier in the state or the national parks. But still, tourists are on board to keep fighting along with the local residents, Little said. He carts a plastic box of postcards around. Big support, they said. The final insult. By day, the road between Presidio and Terlingua through the Big Bend Ranch State Park, it curves along the river and then climbs and plunges over the big steep hills. Violent volcanic explosions some 30 million years ago created sheer rock faces and fields of boulders that make the region's geography so unique. The Rio Grande is a relatively recent arrival in geological terms, spilling down into the Big Bend roughly only 2 million years ago. In late March, turtles sun themselves on the edge. Gambel's quail, they scamper over the rocks. A seething sun, 100 degrees in the afternoon, it keeps some of the other wildlife at bay. Putting up a wall separating us from the river is so much a part of my existence that it would be like a final insult, they said. So why do they want to build it? With an economy larger than all but 7 countries and a history of fights for independence, the Lone Star State and the former Republic of Texas, it has a track record of staring down the federal government. It's the largest state in the lowest 48, and it's the second most populous. In Presidio, Luis Armendez Spencer, he keeps a dusty copy of the Texas Monthly in his backseat of his Chevy with a cover story on Texas gunslingers that was called The Hell We Raised. He owns farmland at the U.S.-Mexico border, and he doesn't think the region needs a border wall. Why do they want to build it, he says, to keep Mexicans from crossing to work in the U.S.? But they don't come anymore. Grassroots activism against border wall construction has rarely been successful, but as Big Bend opposition has grown, including among Republicans, Trump's Department of Homeland Security has sent signals that it may be listening. On March the 30th, the Smart Wall map, it updated again to reflect that new stance. But residents say new colors on a digital map, they are not enough to calm their fears. When the map changed, did we celebrate? We did, she said, but we're still on high alert. Landowners have received notices threatening eminent domain, the federal government's right to seize property with a fair payment for its own purposes. Then on April the 20th, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers landmen were scheduled to review property titles at the Presidio County Courthouse, they said. Contractors are surveying the area. In Valentine, now that's 95 miles north of Presidio, Colorado, the mayor received a request from a company called Frontier Development to set up a man camp with 200 trailers to house out-of-town construction workers. Carrera, who returned to her hometown of Presidio after a decade in Dallas, she worries how man camps, construction teams, and floodlighting will affect the rural calm and the dark night skies that drew her back home. In Dallas, I used to have to plan the time of day that I could see the moon. Today, I took a picture with my iPhone. You can see the whole Milky Way. I feel so special to be 4 minutes from a sign that says Night Sky Reserve, she said. If they do this, it's going to ruin everything, you know?
And here's the Lifeline column. Kylie Jenner is also a fan. Kylie Jenner isn't just Timothy Chalamet's girlfriend. She's a fan. On Kid Cudi's new Big Bro podcast, she revealed that she saw Chalamet's Wonka movie like 7 times. Jenner was asked to choose a favorite of her Oscar-nominated boyfriend's movies. She said, "That's really hard for me because I feel like I love them all. But Call Me By Your Name is pretty perfect. It's just pretty perfect," she said. In a March interview with Vanity Fair, the beauty mogul and mom of 2 said she wants more children. In the last 20 years of my 20s, I want to focus on just me, my business, my work, traveling with my kids, and enjoying my kids. Then I do want to have more kids, she said. Jenner's relationship with Chalamet started in 2023, and she frequently accompanied him at award shows during his Oscar campaign as Best Actor nominee for Marty Supreme. Whose birthday is it today? Director Francis Ford Coppola turns 87. Singer Patricia Bennett of the Chiffons is 79. Singer-guitarist John Oates of Hall & Oates is 78. Singer Janice Ian is 75. Actor Jackie Chan is 72. Actor Russell Crowe is 62. Actor Heather Burns is 51. And producer-actor Kevin Michael Alejandro is 50. Here's the horoscopes. Aries, refusing to budge? You may not be ready to re-examine a conviction. Taurus, ready to defend your vision? As the moon clashes with Mercury, go into a conversation prepared to listen to counterpoints. Gemini, giving your opinion? Maintain your cool during a midday business conversation as Mercury and the moon clash. Cancer, too much on your plate? As the moon and Mercury clash, try not to stress over what you can't control. Leo, what are you looking for? Curiosity is a virtue as the moon and the Mercury square off. Keep asking questions. Virgo, scrutinizing an issue from all angles. A battle rages between your instincts and intellect as the moon and Mercury clash. Libra, mind racing? Getting into a groove will free you from mental spiral. Scorpio, navigating uncertainty, the moon's clash with Mercury as you're feeling destabilized. Distraction is a good antidote for stress. Sagittarius, finding it hard to stay on topic? Emotional ups and downs commandeer your conversations. Capricorn, can't conceive of another option? You're convinced that's the way it is as the moon clashes with Mercury. Aquarius, torn between making the sensible and the popular choice, the moon's clash with Mercury aggravates this morning. Pisces, think before you speak. Words said in haste, you'll repent at leisure. You've been listening to a reading of USA Today for Tuesday, April 7th, 2026. We read USA Today weekday at noon. For more information, call 821-5555. Your readers today have been
Jody
and Alan Blackburn.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service is episode 17 of Buckeye by Patrick Ryan. At 3 o'clock, National Geographic, and at 4 o'clock, a re-airing of the Buffalo News. Stay with us. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print